To note the roll of present, and I will ask every one of you to try to be sure to get your name on the roster so we can know who is here.
Set it up for church.
For the moment, I think I'd like to make it as free and easy for everybody to talk as they can, but so that everybody can hear. Let's limit our individual discussions for 4 or 5 minutes, or 10 at the most, to begin with, and then if after everybody's been heard, and perhaps we can go back around if others have more to say. Appreciate you all being here, and we can open the public hearing now, and I would ask that you give your name before talking so that it will appear on the tape record. Is there anyone here who would like to make any comment on the charter? You know, we've tried to do a job that will satisfy everybody, and that never happened. So now we'd like to hear what we didn't do right. Oh yes, I'd like one other thing. I'd like to have charter members introduce themselves. Starting with Mr. Fisher.
Dick Fisher. Fred Chine.
Frank Reed.
Mary Cronin.
Jim Parsons.
Alistair DeVicki. Carol Holmes. Lisa Parker.
And Rick Garnett, our attorney.
We got through that part.
May I call upon any one of you, or who would like to start?
What's Mayor?
First of all, I've never seen such a mix-up in regard to publicity of where your meetings are going to be, and tonight's paper didn't help anymore. The news article on page 3 indicated the meeting, I think, was at Willow Crest tonight, and the ad on page 33 indicates it was here. Secondly, I have to indicate to you some objection in my personal feeling that 6 meetings you're having in the community, only one is scheduled in the city, and I think the population mix is about 50-50, and I don't know another part of the town within the city limits couldn't have been also scheduled for a meeting. So be it. Some of my comments, Mr. Chairman, will be questions as much as anything else of why you put it in or what's behind your putting it in, this type of thing. If we could, I'd like to go to page 2. I have to apologize. I had notes on one of the ads, and I think I fire somewhere this evening.
Where you are speaking to
2C.
2C.
And this maybe should be your attorney, but I know that the
What's the section, George?
C, page 2C.
Give us a section. 202C
I'm
or...
at page 2C.
No, we're not on pages. We're in the
Article 2, powers.
1C.
Okay.
Article 2, powers.
202.
Referendum.
Point
Be
202.
filed at any time.
The 60-day, only if the petition is filed within 60 days after the effective date of the ordinance or resolution. Legally, Rick, where is it? How legal is that to have a time limitation that a person can come in and file it? I know you can put it in there, but I'm just wondering from a legal standpoint.
I'm not aware of any legal obstacle to doing that, Mr. Mayor.
Because somewhere else in here, and I'll probably come upon it, you've also mentioned like filing a claim against the city for damage. I think you have 4 months or something like that. And I just can't imagine that somebody has damage, physical damage, or that's undetermined that they have to file within 4 months.
Mr. Chairman, if I might comment on that point, that has caused some confusion. That provision is not a limitation on the time within which the suit can be brought. It is only a requirement that notice be given to the municipality within that period of time. It's also been held that such notice requirements do not apply while a person is physically unable to function. The guy's hurt, then the 60 days would be told to stop until he was ready to, or was able to do it. On the referendum point, I really don't know quite what the problem would be with having a limit on the time within which an ordinance could be challenged by referendum. I think there are fairly frequently limits on the power to challenge certain things, such as bond issues, the incorporation of municipalities, things that have some public overtone.
Many times, and I'm thinking, I guess from the public standpoint more than I am the legislative standpoint, many times ordinances are put into effect and aren't enforced rigidly at first. Seems like a limitation.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, are you thinking about the 60 days here, as Shirley just pointed out, really is only a limitation on the ability of a petition to suspend the effect of an ordinance? The first sentence says that you can file a referendum petition any time. You can challenge an ordinance at any time. But the Commission thought that if you're going to give that petition the effect of suspending the ordinance, then it was proper to make it be pretty prompt.
Any petition filed in 60 days after the effective date of the ordinance or resolution.
That's
Mr.
qualification to the first.
Maybe that's what my question is for clarification.
The referendum petition may be filed any time, but the ordinance is suspended by the petition only if the petition is filed within the 60 days.
After the effective date of the ordinance.
Right. In the case of filing the petition longer than 60 days,
It's
the
not
ordinance would be
suspended.
in effect until the vote, and then upon determination by vote.
Mary, you had something?
Well, I was just trying to point out that I think Mr. Sullivan was misinterpreting, because a person can file a referendum anytime from now until 6 years after the ordinance, or indefinitely after the ordinance has been put in. It's the fact that whether or not, once you file the petition, that you want to stop the effect of the ordinance until the vote can be taken on the next election.
Which has to be within the 60 days.
And if you don't do it within 60 days after it goes in, then it wouldn't be suspended unless the Assembly so declared themselves, until after the referendum had taken place.
What was the rationale between the 60 days and anything after the 60 days?
Say that again? What was the rationale between 60 days and anything after 60 days? Why set 60 days? Why not 30 or 120?
Well,
Is that your question?
Yeah, right.
All right. I think I can answer that, sir. We felt that if we said that it had to be done within 30 days, lots of folks wouldn't find out that it had even been passed within 30 days. But within 60 days, surely it would have been enforced, at least some, and folks would have become aware of it. And they could get a referendum going.
I have a question, Chairman. The file petition, is the 10% of the voters on the petition required in the 60-day period? In other words, I think that would be quite a chore if you get the 10% of the vote in 60 days. First place, as Mary said, you probably wouldn't even know it was passed for quite a while.
You haven't stopped to figure out how many that would be, I believe.
No, I haven't.
It's about 2,000 people. And if it's something that is very offensive, you can probably get 2,000 people within a week to sign.
Could be 2,000 now, but then again, it could be 20,000.
Yes, that's right.
We don't know how many people are going to vote every election. We might get
That's
a problem
right.
next time.
Mr. Holmes?
Again, with regard to the date, we did have quite a bit of discussion. I think at one point we had 90 days. At one point we had thought of 30 days. And I think what we were trying to do was to balance the equity between the public confusion of having an ordinance in effect for a period of time and then not in effect, with allowing some suspension of an ordinance. I mean, we could write it so that no referendum petition suspended the ordinance. The ordinance would go on until the election, but in some cases the election might be almost a year after the ordinance is passed. So if we've done a time that doesn't appear equitable, I think we're open to suggestion for change on it.
The next one is on 3.02C. I think the wording should be expanded a little bit on that. It says, an assemblyman shall remain a resident of Anchorage and of the district from which elected while in office. And I personally would like to see it either add another sentence or add on to it, or the seat is automatically vacated, or if a person moves from one district to another. I realize the qualifications are in there for a candidate. Say shall remain a resident of Anchorage and district from which elected. And I know in the past there's been assemblymen moved from one district to another district. Don Smith did, I can't remember, someone else did.
Mr. Noreen,
Noreen.
you're talking and you want to see the penalty or what happens if he violates that.
It looks to me like you're generally saying that, but you don't specifically say the seat is vacated. And I would think that upon moving, he's vacated his seat.
We also had a question earlier on that as to define resident. And I think somewhere else we got to that.
And then down to 3.05, filling vacancy. Vacancy occurs on the assembly. The remaining members shall fill the vacancy by appointment within 30 days. This may sound nitpicking, but the person appointed shall serve. I think you should say the person appointed should qualify under 3.02B, which would be the same as a candidate.
Qualifications.
No, it's a good point.
Well, I know it sounds like nitpicking, but a little later on, I know the question to Lou Noreen was kind of a specific one that came up in regards to whether or not they had the right to vacate his seat because the language wasn't clear. And I think he was made aware of it later and was quite upset, but by that time they'd already filled it.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder, Mayor Sullivan, if we could ask a question that bears a bit on the items you've touched here. In 303 or 304, determining vacancy, we had a great deal of debate as to whether we would spell out what constituted a vacancy for some basic things, and determined to leave this wording. We have testimony that indicates perhaps it would be better if we spelled out some of those reasons for vacating an office rather than leaving it up to the legislative body to
I thought I'd
establish.
seen something like that in here about that.
304.
That was in the 1971 charter, but we did not put it in this draft.
Are you asking me?
Well, no, I just wondered if you had seen that and if you felt possibly there should be.
I thought it was in there, so I...
Well, so you... Okay.
Definitely. Well, when I made my notes on it. I would think that you would if you're talking about vacancies. Of course, as I've testified previously, I don't support the strong borough mayor concept that surmises, I don't know what you refer to it as here, but it's the one that's in effect in the borough. Although I support the veto power. As I said previously, I may be jealous because I don't have veto power.
But you got to vote.
The veto is a little bit better. Under section 4.03, well, that's where I saw about the mayor's office becoming vacant upon death, resignation, removal from office. Under the administrative code, I believe it is, it stipulates in there that any municipal official that misses 3 regular meetings without excuse, his office may be vacated. I don't know if you want to make reference to state statute or whether they automatically apply to this, Rick, or what.
I don't think that particular one would automatically apply.
You do?
I do not.
You do not.
I think it would have to be spelled out if that were to be.
Why wouldn't it automatically apply if it said all municipal elected officials?
Well, the way it's set up in the code, there are only a limited number of provisions in the municipal code that apply to home rule municipalities. And those particular provisions are spelled out close to the beginning of the title.
I think that one is.
Excuse me.
I think that one is.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. I didn't recall it. I'd be happy to check it.
Would you please?
I don't.
You like that provision, is that what you're saying?
Well, I was just thinking if it applied that you might want to encompass it here or make reference to state statute.
If it doesn't, do you think it's desirable?
Well, if it's good enough for all the other municipal employees or officials elected, all elected municipal officials, I don't know why. I think it says 3 meetings, regular meetings without excuse or whatever. I can't remember the exact wording. Under section 4.04, I'm now going over to the mayor's side. There should be a municipal attorney appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the assembly. The attorney serves at the pleasure of the mayor. I question why the confirmation by the assembly, because you provide in here back further somewhere that the assembly will be authorized to hire all their own legal staff and consulting people. So if they're going to hire their own legal, why do they have to confirm the man that's going to be the attorney for the mayor?
Mr. Chairman? Just a comment on that. The provision is there that the staff or the legislative body can hire staff. It is certainly not hoped that they would, but that provision is there.
But it
And
specifies legal then too, doesn't it?
well, that they may, and hopefully they will not. And with the idea of confirming by the assembly or finding a person agreeable, it's hoped that the attorney would serve the function of both the executive and the legislative branch.
The basic reason, I believe, for doing that is the possibility of strife between the executive and the legislative, where the legislative feels that the attorney is working for the executive and not serving them. This gives them the privilege, if they desire and find it necessary, to obtain other counsel.
Well, I think you have a different setup here, where the attorney is going to be acting directly to the mayor under this proposed thing here, and I just don't see him acting as the attorney for the legislative body too. He's there to give the opinion of the mayor. When you get into conflicts, who's he going to give the opinion of? He's going to give it to the guy that signed his thing.
Well, they give it to the mayor, but then the legislative body, if there arose a problem, could obtain their own counsel.
Well, that's why I didn't understand why they should have to confirm this. Under 4.07, boards and commissions may make recommendations to the assembly, the mayor, and his executive department on matters specified in the ordinance treating the board or commission. Generally, the assembly is going to be a policy-making body, and it seemed to me, and I've been working with commissions here in the city for a good many years now, and we've worked it both ways, where they made recommendations to the manager, and they made recommendations to the council. And recently, we've, last year, cleaned it up so that their recommendations are definitely to the council, the policy-making body. In fact, it caused an awful lot of confusion with the commission as to who they were supposed to talk to. Were they supposed to talk to the city manager, or this where it went to? And sometimes recommendations would go to him, and he didn't necessarily want it to come to council. So he'd fix it along the way and everything else. I just feel it works a lot better for us now, and it seems like it's a lot better clarified with the commissions themselves that they report to the legislative body.
Comment on that. I happen to serve on one of the commissions, and I find it, I can agree with the mayor at this point, that occasionally we are issued a directive by the city attorney or by the city clerk or something, and quite frankly, it's the feeling of many of the people on the commission that they don't work for the city clerk and they don't work for the city attorney, they work for the mayor and they work for the council. And that we are an advisory commission and we don't feel that we should be directed by some of the administrative employees to do this or to do that. That we should be directed by the people that hire us, the mayor or the council. And I think that this is a good point to bring that in because it takes up the time, if we're deciding on Board of Appeals deal, to have a city attorney down there giving us instructions, raising the hackles on our necks because we don't want to be instructed. We want to deliberate in our own wisdom or lack thereof. And I think it would be a good thing. The boards and commissions generally work for anywhere from nothing to $2 an hour. Sometimes it stretches out to 15 cents an hour and something long drawn out. I'm sure Ms. Sturgeluski can testify to that.
If I fall asleep here because of that low pay,
The feeling is that we're not down there for self-glorification, at least ostensibly we're not. We're not down there for pay. But we don't want to take up our time and the time of the litigants on these appeals and that sort of thing, listening to an administrative employee attempt to instruct us on what he thinks that we ought to do to satisfy the administrative desires of the municipality, as opposed to whether we are supposed to grant relief or some form of aid to the litigants, decide either in favor or not in favor. But we feel we're being pressured many times by the administration from these things coming. I think it'd be a good idea to embody something that would isolate the boards and commissions from the pressure of the administrative employees.
Mrs. Holmes.
Chairman, to follow up on this, I think that's a good comment, Ms. Sullivan, that you make, and I would wonder if, in that case, under 407B, you would have then the assembly appoint the members of boards and commissions rather than the mayor. Maybe the mayor recommend to the assembly and the assembly appoint. How do you reconcile having a board or commission that's responsible to the assembly appointed by someone else?
Well, of course, I appoint in the city and it's confirmed by the city council, of which I'm a member, and their recommendations, after we clarified the ordinance, is to the legislative body. And
You don't see an inconsistency with having the mayor appoint and then spelling out that the boards and commissions are directly responsible?
Well, don't you look at this legislative body as a policy-making body for the government? I think that's who they should go to as a policymakers. That's who they're recommending. See, then the legislative body takes the recommendation and takes it on to the administration. You know, they either support or don't support, advise the administration as to their feelings of the recommendation.
I agree with what you're saying, and I just wonder if we
I
are...
think the mayor should still appoint it.
You think that's okay?
By the confirmation, but the legislative body will be the one that they...
Mr. Chairman,
Mary Coney.
Well, we've had several kinds of advisory boards in the borough. Sometimes they have been appointed as advisors to the mayor, and sometimes they have been appointed as advisors to a particular department. And I don't think that it necessarily causes a problem unless the board doesn't understand who they're supposedly advising. I think that's where the problem might arise that you're speaking about. I served on one in relation to the solid waste management before I was elected on the assembly. And we were working with the department on that. We weren't working directly with the assembly. When we got through,
Their recommendation, when they make a recommendation, I think should come to the legislature.
well, when we got through, the recommendation did go to the legislative body. But the work was with
commission in
the
the city works with some department. We have the Port Commission works with the port officials, the telephone commission, the electrical commission, all of them work with people within the city. But it's when they have a recommendation
then that goes to the
legislature.
assembly.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what
Well,
I said.
Mr. Chairman, you actually do take, say, official actions through the form of a resolution, and it is addressed to your legislative body. I think we need to work on this section. I appreciate the comment.
My point is that maybe we're not distinguishing between the purely advisory bodies and the ones who are quasi-judicial.
Maybe.
But the ones I'm talking about specifically are quasi-judicial. I have felt a little bit of umbrage at times to, for instance, to have the building officials start instructing me as to how I should decide a particular case. I mean, I probably would decide in his favor, but I don't like for him to be so presumptuous. But
I'll bet you tell him.
Section 5.02 under powers, and this is again nitpicking, but you say the legislative body, it seems to me that all the way through here you say the assembly. Suddenly you've jumped over to the legislative body.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, what is your rules of procedure here? I have a comment to make about board and commissions. I don't know whether it's waived or...
I think at this point, I would accept such comment because we're covering it. However, I did feel that each one should go through his period and then come back.
I didn't
Not
suggest
unless-
that you not need to cut off.
Right.
Mayor.
You did say that. Been waiting years to do this.
No, I've talked quite a bit about this problem of the administration overwhelming boards and commissions. And I said the only way out would be that a board and commission would have a staff that would be responsible to them. Now, whether the staff is from the administration doesn't make any difference.
What we did when
What happens is that they end up just being rubber stamped, and the information that they have is what information the administration chooses to give them. And it's particularly a tough problem like at budget time. I've been on three of them, and it was practically impossible to pass.
One thing we did to help a little bit on that was we appropriated some additional funds in the clerk's office a couple of years ago, wasn't it, Bill? And someone in the clerk's office is assigned to take the minutes and transcribe the minutes and completely.
Great.
Because before we had problems even on what the minutes would say.
Would you state your name again for
John Gray.
Right.
Under 6.03, under emergency ordinances, the last sentence on page under, the mayor may veto an emergency ordinance only during the meeting in which the ordinance is adopted. What if he isn't present?
Yeah, we've,
Mr. Chairman, we've seen the error of our ways.
Because you say the manager who acts as the acting mayor can't have veto power.
Oh. we're talking about possibly, there's been some discussion that we would allow 3 days or something. The reason we dropped that out is because they can override a veto. It calls for a three-fourths vote to veto. We did not, frankly, take into consideration that the mayor might be out of town. That does need, I think, discussion.
Because I think you provided here that his manager is the acting mayor while he's out of town,
We didn't give
Except
him
for
veto.
and you don't give him veto.
no veto power.
George,
That should
3
be
days
changed.
be all right?
I would think so. Well, wait a minute.
He could fly back around the world, couldn't he?
This is, yeah.
Someone suggested maybe 3 days and telegraph his veto.
Yeah, I think if you could accept a telegraphic veto or something.
We worked out a method to allow the mayor to veto from a distance. It's that sort of thing.
Here you specifically state that the other man's the acting mayor while he's gone.
Cannot have legal power. Specifically state that.
Seems to me if you, 4 days is an awful long time to take care of an emergency.
Right.
That's part of the problem.
Right.
Well, I just raised the question, it's your problem.
Yeah,
We'll solve it.
that should be redone.
I'd like to give you another one.
Russ, would you give your name? Would you give your name if you're?
Russ Meters. Been here. I don't want you to miss the opportunity.
Two-thirds.
What's it take to override a veto?
Two-thirds.
2/3. Well, it takes 2/3 to pass an emergency ordinance. How are you going to veto that?
For all the members present.
This was the reason, as Arliss said, that we figured that the veto was really questionable anyhow.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Under 7.03, qualification of voters,
701.
7.03. Under B, a resident of Anchorage for 30 days immediately preceding the election and a resident of the Assembly election district in which he seeks to vote. Is there any time for that election district? 1 day.
Movement.
Move in, move on.
Everybody's got to
Move
stay
in,
for
move on. Why wouldn't you want the same qualifications of the district as you would of the community?
Of the person running for office,
No. To be able to vote, you have to be a resident of Anchorage for 30 days, and 1 day a resident of the election district. I was wondering why the same was the time.
There could be
Wait,
problems
Ms.
with
Parker.
that because somebody could move into an election district and never have changed their voter registration card and it's valid. And Canvas Board comes in, they review it, and they say, well, I guess.
I think, the mayor, is that this way no one's disenfranchised from voting. Because conceivably, if you required 30 days, a person would be disenfranchised if he moved out of his district for that 30-day period.
No, what I'm saying, if it has to be 30 days in Anchorage, why wouldn't it be just as valid to have him 30 days in the district where he's voting?
Well, for that reason, because if he moves out of a district into a new district, just prior to the election, he couldn't vote in either district.
Can he go back to his old district and vote?
No, he couldn't. He wouldn't be a resident of his old district. See, that's the problem.
But they do what then, allow him to vote a challenge ballot and set it on that basis.
Well, if you had the 30-day requirement in there, I assume it would be a challenge ballot, but the challenge would be would not hold, I wouldn't think, because he wouldn't be a resident of his old district, and he wouldn't have been a resident of the new district for 30 days. So you just can't vote. We didn't think that was fair.
What's the requirements now?
I don't know if there is one now.
30 days in the district?
No, I think it's 3 days in Anchorage, isn't it?
You have to live in Anchorage 30 days. You have to register 30 days prior to the election to be able to vote in that election.
But you don't have to live in the district. You have to live in Anchorage.
You have to live in Anchorage, and when you go to vote, you must vote in the district that you reside in.
Right.
Right, at that moment in time. Right, which we're reflecting here.
That's correct. We did deal with that.
9.07. I'm a little confused in the wording here. The board shall hold at least one public hearing on the proposed budget program before school board recommendation to the mayor. And again, at least one public hearing after assembly action. The proposed budget program shall be approved and submitted to the mayor at least 120 days before the end of the current fiscal year of the municipality. Are you talking in that last sentence of the school district or the assembly? School board or the assembly?
Of the assembly.
Proposed budget shall be approved and submitted to the mayor at least 120 days before the end of the current fiscal year.
He's right here. Excuse me, Mayor Sullivan, where are you?
907.
907.
And the last sentence of 907?
9.07, the last sentence. My question was, the proposed budget program should be approved and submitted to the mayor at least 120 days before the end of the current fiscal year of the municipality. I was asking as to who it came from to him, from the assembly or from the school board for that time.
That's a good point. The board is the intent, Mr. Mayor.
You see the current fiscal year of the municipality. Now, don't you have the school board on fiscal and the
Yes, you do.
new government on calendar? The fiscal year of the municipality, is that the school municipality or the government?
No, it's one municipality, and there's one taxing agency, and we were trying to set it, I recollect the discussion, so that the taxing agency, so that the body that will be setting the mill rate would have the total picture at the time they set the mill rate.
Mr. President,
It's a calendar. The fiscal year of the municipality's calendar year.
Yeah.
But
That's what's meant.
But then you're saying that this has to be back to the mayor by the 1st of September, prior to the adoption of the budget up in November or December, the school budget. And the school budget isn't staying on a fiscal?
It's staying on a fiscal year.
Well, on July 1st.
We did talk with Norm Levesque, and we did talk with Bob Nelson, and as to what this would pose in the way of problems. And they both fairly well felt that this was a way to do it. Now, there was another comment that this would cause no end confusion, yet the two men that are now handling it don't think it will, if I'm correct. Is that?
They feel very strongly that the fiscal year on the calendar year basis is appropriate for the year.
My question is,
Mr. Sullivan is right. We do need to clarify which fiscal year we're talking about here. He's absolutely right. Whether we're talking about the school fiscal year or whether we're talking about the municipality's fiscal year. He's right. We haven't said.
but the school district is going to be on a fiscal year, July 1 through June 30.
Right.
And when does their budget, though, operates in continuity with the new government's budget?
Split.
It'll
Split?
Half and half.
Well, then aren't you saying here that the proposed budget of the schools shall be approved and submitted to the mayor at least 120 days before the end of the current fiscal year of the municipality?
Yeah.
That's right.
You're saying it has to be approved before September, yet they're on their fiscal year starts the 1st of July.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, one thing we have written in, and obviously we have failed to make ourselves fully clear here. We want to mandate that the school board will actually approve or recommend a budget, that they will not pass it as they did the last time without making a recommendation. I do think we need some clarification in here.
But let me ask you again, I'm not sure. Does the school budget Is it approved by the assembly prior to the 1st of July, or is it merged together with the borough budget?
Merged together.
With the new government?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it
Chairman,
Jim Brown.
George, we've had some comment from at least one CPA who would hope that we could get to one fiscal year. And the bind is, as you know, that the state law requires the school district the way it is. And the federal government next year is going on October, we're told. And
77.
yeah,
State's still on it.
and it is awkward.
You've got a real problem here somewhere in financing out of the borough too, where you're only funding, Dick, remember back, what, it was 20% of the last year's budget?
This will solve, going to a calendar year will solve that problem, except if the school district will still have it. Yeah.
Yes.
On that same area, you said that school board recommendations should be sent to the mayor and at least one public hearing after assembly action. Is that the assembly action that would approve the budget?
That was the intent.
Then what happens at the public hearing then? You've approved the budget and then you just...
Mr. Chairman,
All right.
the budget is as approved as a total figure, and it may be different than what the board recommends. The idea is that when they get it back, that they should again allow the public a chance to put input in if the budget figure was different from what the board recommended, so that the public could have some chance to recommend where cuts would be made, or if they by glory chance got more than they asked for, that they could say where it could be spent.
But then let's say if there were, this happened, then is the assembly going to then...
It isn't the assembly that is being mandated to have the public hearing. It's the school board that's being mandated to allow the public to get one more chance in to have its say as to how that money is going to be spent.
But then I'm saying, but then that budget will then come back to the assembly?
No, they've approved the total amount.
The total amount,
But
period.
the categories within the amount, sometimes they juggle them around and the public wants to say, hey, we want music and art to stay.
Okay, but let's say that happens, and then does this mandate the school board to go along with those recommendations? Or
No, it does not.
Just to listen.
Just to listen. Any more than we would be mandated here to go along with any recommendations that came out of this group. We're mandated to have a hearing. And obviously, if a sensible question comes up and it is sensibly addressed and we're sensible about it, we're going to take some action on. If obviously we couldn't be mandated to accept every recommendation here because they would be at contrary or at odds.
Well, if the school board, really, let's say, put in a lot of time and effort, and they are really convinced that what they recommended was true, and they've given this recommendation to the assembly, and they agree that that's true, but yet there is still, a great deal of dissension. I don't understand what the value
Mr. Chairman.
of the hearing would be, other than to say we still feel the way we do.
Yes, I think that perhaps we need to clarify that we mandate this public hearing only in the event that the assembly, say, would set a different figure. What has happened very frequently, let's assume a $50,000 budget goes from the school board with a recommendation. There have been public hearing, public input, and the school board does their thing, sends it on to the assembly. The assembly does not have line item veto. They knock off $5 million. It goes back as a $45 million budget to the school board. Then programs are cut and teacher pupil ratio and so on are changed. That's what we're saying, that there should be a public hearing where the school board can work within that $45 million budget. They should listen to, or have the public have a chance to have input. possibly we should clarify that only in the case that there is a different figure, dollar figure given by the assembly that we would require the public hearing. I agree with, why go over it if everybody's in agreement?
Or either why, but the point I was trying to make, what value is it? Let's say if there's still substantial disagreement, it seems to me it's just, well, we're presenting it, but your recommendations are still not going to be of any value to make any changes, and this is an approved budget, so it's just a matter of record. An actual public hearing.
Mr. Fisher has.
Well, I didn't understand your question way back when, Joel. I guess you're satisfied you understand it.
I understand my question, but
Mr. Chairman, well, I think I know what's...
Could I please? Please. Your question was that, is that a firm decision by the Assembly? I mean, does the school board have to, the school board has to live with the decision of the Assembly then, right?
that's what it says.
Okay, and that is correct.
It's taken action.
And it has taken action, and the school board does in fact have to live with that within a total amount, within the total amount of the budget. The reason that we did all of this, and perhaps clumsily, is that we were attempting to force the school board to then hold another public hearing to see how they were going to, in fact, disperse those funds within their budget. Okay?
Well, the point then being that everybody's got to live with that action, the school board, the general public, everybody, but it's just giving the public then an opportunity to speak with the board about how that...
About where the allocation of the new amount, and conceivably a higher amount, conceivably the Assembly could say, no, not a $50 million budget, a $55 million budget. And then it comes back, and the public has some opportunity to have the input into that budget as to specifically where that money's going to go within the budget. That's the idea.
Well, Mary Proney had a...
Joe, I don't believe you're quite clear. The Assembly doesn't, on what they're trying to tell you. The Assembly cannot have a line item veto. They can't say, you can't spend this amount of money in this school, or you can't spend this for this program. They do not have a line item veto. The only thing the Assembly has the final say on is the total figure. They cannot specify any particular program. The board has all control of whether they spend their total number of dollars in this place or that place or the other place. The Assembly can't control that in any manner.
Mr. Chairman?
And that's the reason that they do have a reason for going back and re-looking at it if they're given a different total figure.
Could I suggest some procedure? I think we're going to have to, instead of...
Let's hear everybody.
Instead of...
Mr. Chairman.
Could I suggest a procedure instead of
the mayor finished
having everyone... Yeah, right.
Let someone else go, because everybody's breaking in. I'm not going to stay here all night.
Okay.
I've got just a few statements to make, and that's all.
I was wondering, I have several more comments. I know you want to keep it brief. Maybe if I stop now and some of these others made theirs, then...
I think it's better. Why don't you finish your comment? Finish your comment.
Well, I just questioned under point 10.04 the wisdom of having two public hearings with one of 21 days after the budget is submitted. By that time, most of the legislative body doesn't even yet know what's in it. 10.07B, the third sentence about 1, 2, 3 line. No transfer of funds is effective until a record of the transfer has been filed with the municipal clerk. Municipal, of course, can mean, I surmise, both school and the new government clerk. And I would surmise there's going to be a clerk in both of those. Which clerk do you mean?
Mr. Chairman.
Let's go on.
I had a call today from Sheila Gallagher-Jones at the school district, and the school district had that same question.
Well,
We'll answer it.
That's how. Mr. Chairman, 11.03, as I understand that, when this new government's formed, that such examples as police power would not be an area-wide power. This would have to be picked up service area by service area by service area. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Fire service would be, as it presently is, and would not go to areas that don't have fire service at the present time. Roads and drainage and public works.
Correct.
12.05, this is probably the attorney's one, but I made a note here, signing for TANs should also then be held for 30 days after passage, and I'm not sure if I have that read correct or not, Rick, but
Signing for what?
tax anticipation notice, which is primarily done just by action of the assembly, and it's not a vote of the people. Maybe it's covered in there, and I just made a note. I guess I had a question. 13.02, I'll just pick it again, but I suppose the municipal utility only pursuant to an ordinance is approved by a majority. It is to be eliminated.
What's your comment, please, sir? I didn't hear what you said.
It says, the municipality may sell, lease, or otherwise dispose of municipal utility only pursuant to an ordinance is approved by a majority.
That's a typographical error.
I said it was that. I was just trying to help you.
Thanks.
14.04, prohibition. Second. Elected official may not hold compensated municipal employment for 1 year after he ceases to be an elected official. I question why the state statute on that, I think that we've all read lately, is that you can't go to a position that you voted on a pay increase for, but it doesn't block people out of going into government. You have many assembly members that would make excellent employees and have some good experience in the government. I would think that your concern would be whether or not they were involved on the pay increase type of thing as opposed to just being employed. On 1406, that was the one, Rick, about the legal, about the no claim may be brought against. 1407, oath of office. I wonder if you didn't want to include in there about upholding the charter and the state and federal constitution. Just being honest. Charter amendment, 15.01. This charter may be amended only by the concurrence of a majority of the qualified voters bankers voting on a proposed amendment. I've run into this word a couple times now. Just let me question, you're talking about those voting in that specific time, the majority of those voting that time, not of the qualified voters in there.
Right.
You have such a ton of them being horrible. Again, just a question on 16.02C. Persons elected under this charter shall take office on certification of the election of the mayor. And if he's not certified, then as I understand it, no one else shall take office. If you have a tie vote, the one elected drops dead, you have to have a new election type of thing. It seems to me like you'd want some other clarification for your legislative people.
Clerk.
Pardon?
Clerk of the, rather than depending on certification when the clerk certified the election.
We talked about that quite a bit last night, George. That would probably be rehashed quite a bit. Paragraph C.
Hollis?
Mr. Chairman, this is in the transitional provision only, and the idea was that when the first government came into effect, that everyone ought to come in at once the very first time, and that if there is a hold-up somewhere, you ought not to have a legislative branch functioning before you have a mayor or vice versa, just the first time. Now, this will not apply to to other elections.
I realize there's only, yeah, I realize that too. I realize there's only one chance out of a million that probably anything could happen. But it seems to me you're going to have complete chaos.
Do you have a suggestion? Because I can see.
Well, I would think you would want to go ahead and you know, there could be illness, death, tie votes, several, you know, crazy things can come to your mind, but I think you'd want your legislative body to go into being and your new government to go into being.
Well, but, and part of the problem
I see what you're saying there too.
with that is that so much is tied up with the two functioning together in the very beginning that we're going to have to look at it.
Yeah.
The mayor cannot have such an unfortunate occurrence happen.
It's not ideal out
It's an unacceptable alternative.
16.04B.
That's a good way to do it.
I think you took this one out of the old one. Remember, the old one got defeated. Current employees affected by unification of duplicative agencies of the former governments are entitled to preference in other municipal employment comparable capacities. Boy, you're talking about a ton of attorneys, duplicate finance directors, Department of Public Works, comptrollers, managers, clerks, fire chiefs, public safety, personnel, on down the line. And I don't know, you may need it in there because you get heat from the employees, but you know, a lot of people are buying this new government on the basis there's going to be some type of efficiency in it. I'm a little bit concerned about
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe that statement guarantees they all have jobs. It says that they have preference if there is a job. And you're interpreting it that there is guaranteed jobs to match the people.
No, I don't know.
Mayor?
Under the, little further down on that same section, pension plan, retirement plans, collective bargaining agreements, other existing employee benefits shall not be diminished by adoption of this charter pending adoption of the administrative code. And then you have a substantial length of time, as I recall, on the adoption of administrative code. In the meantime, especially like the city, if it becomes a service district under this, they have contracts coming up with firemen around the end of the year, or Anchorage municipal employees and stuff. And I don't know if you're taking that into consideration or not.
No. There was also a question about Social Security brought up last night.
Yeah, I saw that. Under 16.05E, if you haven't checked with the bond council, I would certainly recommend that you do and get in writing from them that any bond of a former government authorized and issued on the date of ratification remains authorized and may be issued at the discretion of the Assembly without additional ratification. I've talked to two different bond councils on this, and they have pretty mixed emotions on it. That could be questionable. One, the liberal of the two, thought the fact that the people of the area adopted the charter with this in it, it might survive. But as you're probably all aware, bond issues and bond sales and bond council opinions are probably one of the most ticklish there is, because you're going to the market. If there's any type of a cloud around it, of course, it either affects your rate or you get no bidders or anything else. There's two or three in town, there are firms that deal with this type of thing. 1606 C. No later than December 31st, 76, the Assembly of the new government should prepare a financial report covering the activities provided for in the budget of the City of Anchorage and the Greater Anchorage Area Borough for the period January 176 to December 31, 76. I don't follow this. If this thing passes, there isn't any City of Anchorage. They wouldn't have a budget other than the service district budget. I don't understand that.
Not later than December 31st, 76, the Assembly of the new government shall prepare a financial report covering the activities provided for in the budgets of the City of Anchorage and the Greater Anchorage Area Borough for the period January 1st, 76 through December 31st, 76.
That's next year.
It's a financial report.
Well, that's for next
Providing,
year. Huh?
no, it's providing for a financial report for the activities of that year, apparently.
Of the year January 176 to December 30,
That's right.
176. If this thing's adopted, there isn't any City of Anchorage, there isn't any budget for them or anything.
I think we maybe need to say former.
Maybe it's 75.
75 is what,
Yeah,
The idea,
it must
Mr. Chairman,
be. Mary?
the idea in this was that if we have the election, that we've got the borough and we've got the city, and that at that point, they would have a legislative body when they're elected together. They would work together until the end of the proposed fiscal year, but the new budget would be together from that date on, and that's saying when the new budget is to take place and the former is to
Well, who would be drafting the
stop.
budget for the City of Anchorage to be effective January 1 of 1976?
It would be a combined budget is the point. At that point.
Lisa?
When this section was wrote up originally, it was with the legislative and they liked the way that this operated because of the two different operations with that the city presently has, the borough has, that in order to work it together, that where there wouldn't be the confusion of, well, where are we? Where's this paper, where's that paper, and what do we need to appropriate? It would be, if there was an election in October, the city at that time would be preparing their budget, and it might be at the council at that time on how the city would be operating for the next year.
Who's going to adopt it? Your council's out, your assembly's out.
The new legislative body would adopt the budget for the then to be service area of the city of Anchorage.
Well, maybe then the wording of these titles are wrong.
It's in the wording. It's in the
Here's the
wording.
wording.
It's the wording.
Yeah, something wrong
By
with
the
the
way,
wording.
you adopt just
I
the
don't.
Yeah.
financial report of the service district of the city, you'd have some other service districts too.
Yeah. But the wrong anyway. Makes sense.
The last one, assets and liabilities. I think you're going to find awful strong opposition in the city taking the telephone, light, municipal light and power. We consider Merrill Field kind of a utility operation, the refuse system, the Port of Anchorage, and giving these to the new government, along with the assets and liabilities, and yet keeping the water distribution system, the tax obligation of that for the service district of the, what would be the former city of Anchorage. And secondly, the sewage collection is another one that we have a lot of problems with because we're paying a double shot on that thing. The city, on the system that they lease to the borough for $1 a year, are paying off $1 million worth of general obligations, general bond obligations, plus they're paying under their rates and under the tax, the CAU indebtedness that was purchased for outside of the city. And I think if you've got a real problem area, this is really one of them, I think.
Mr. Chairman?
Implement.
Mr. Mayor, there is a difficulty there. We are bound by state law, 2968-410. And this wording really comes pretty well from there. It says, however, pre-unification bonded indebtedness or other debt for sewage collection systems, water distribution systems, and streets, even if determined to be used for the benefit of a larger area than that which incurred the debt, shall remain the tax obligation of the area which incurred the debt. So there's a problem. We can't get around that.
But when I testified here several weeks ago before you, for your consideration, I read off to you the assets and liabilities of the utilities in the city, and it was quite evident the telephone company is a fairly good utility, and municipal light power is a fairly good one. And in fact, I think I advised you, it was my understanding that Juneau had done this, was to, when the service area cannot own a utility like this, certainly the fact they had owned it, that the profits of the utilities could be returned to that service system. And I think it's a real troublesome area. And one other item I want to mention is on your recommendation in here of the full-time mayor and veto power. That again, I think this could be a very troublesome area in the city. I'd like to call to your attention I don't know what all your testimony's been on this. I've read some of your minutes, but that the election last February, I feel, was a very unfair one as far as an informational poll, because it listed two ways of the manager-council form of government, listed only one way of the present borough mayor form of government. And if you took the city vote on that, you'd find that the vote for the manager-council totaled 2,377 votes in the city, as opposed to 1,548 supporting the present borough mayor form of government. So, and lastly, Bill, sorry, on the districts, again, I testified previously, and I still feel the same way, that I would prefer at-large elections, but at the very least, the plan that you have here would be acceptable. I would be opposed to the single-member district.
Provides necessary checks and balances for a nonpartisan government. Eliminates the typical political appointments of department heads and a change of administration as would normally occur with your elected mayor executive proposal. An example is the mayor executive form of government such as the Greater Anchorage Area Borough has now, which has proven the way I feel about it, has proven to be a most inefficient and unworkable government. That's my feeling anyway. I strongly urge you not to continue the horrible mistakes this area has been subjected to since 1964. This is when the borough came into effect. I would also suggest that you review Article 5 involving community councils and revert back to the position of advisory that rather than granting the authority, which is somewhat uncertain in Section 5.02. I am totally dismayed at your Section 16.07 involving assets and liabilities. This section obviously is untenable to the City of Anchorage residents, inasmuch as it steals the utilities and gives them to the entire borough. As you know, the city owns major utilities, telephone, electric, port, Merrill Fields, and they're worth billions of dollars, and they could be readily sold. What happens to the money for such a sale? The charter is completely silent, which means the new assembly, which will, and it might be controlled by outside city members, could spend the money for anything they wanted to, anywhere in the new municipality. If such a sale occurs, the money in excess of the revenue received should go to the retire the city bonded debt for the port and some of the other utilities. It looks to me like the Charter Commission is trying to hold out another plum for the rural residents to get a few votes at the expense of city taxpayers. Incidentally, control over such a sale will rest with the people outside of the city because they outnumber us. And in conclusion, I want to say that it appears that what you've done, or what you're trying to do, is make the City of Anchorage a service area, and I object to that. And the Greater Anchorage Area Borough which will take the assets of the city give them to the borough. This is this new charter. You give it to the borough at large, and subsequently the financial debt of the borough is dumped back on the city residents. So I object to the way that you are handling the transfer of the assets and the liabilities of the city of Anchorage. We've paid for them over a period of years, and we've maintained them. We're pleased with it. The people who live in the city like it. We bond ourselves for it, and we provide services for it. But here all of a sudden you want to wipe all of this out, and you don't even provide other than the water system and the streets. But the other utilities, you don't say a darn thing about it. So I'm opposed to those sections that I spoke on here tonight as far as your charter is concerned.
Lisa?
Can I ask you, Mr. Besser or the Mayor, if you took all the utilities and added up the assets and liabilities, what would they be?
What would they be, or what would they amount to?
What would be the total dollar amount?
They could be sold for over $300 million.
I mean, as they presently stand right now, what are the assets of all the utilities and what are the liabilities of all the utilities?
You still would have over 200 million left, I would say, to disperse.
Okay. How much money from the utilities goes into the general government fund for the city of Anchorage?
Well, right now, because we own the utilities, we receive or get a reduction in our tax bill is something like almost 4 mils. Now, once these are taken away, and maybe the city taxpayer doesn't know this yet, but once they are taken away, he's not going to have that break anymore. He's not going to be able to allow to plow back the profits made by the utilities, which reduces his tax bill. But once you go into this new municipal government, he's on even keel with everybody else, but he still has the debt. But you're not going to allow him to use the money from the operation of this to retire his debt. You're going to spend it area-wide.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, please.
Why should we have unification?
I beg your pardon?
Why should we have unification if everybody's going to be upset with everything that happened? I thought it was all so that, everybody became one and we all got together instead of, everybody's still saying, well, this is this.
Well, if you want to make this area-wide, this is fine, but let everybody share in it. But don't take the thing away and not give the people the benefit. If they've obligated themselves for the debt should then be paid for by the operation of those utilities, but you haven't provided for that. You're not giving the taxpayer or the city a break at all.
Mr. Chairman, I may have an answer to that question she asked. These figures are about a month old when I testified last time. In the water, port, telephone, and municipal light and power, assets are roughly $163 million. I don't have it broke out. And the liabilities are $122 million.
So the major concern is the retirement of the debt bill.
Well, that's one of them. And the fact that the City of Anchorage form of government, that really is not one thing that I'll buy, because we've had an effective government here for all the years I've lived here, and it's worked beautiful. I can't say the same thing about the borough.
Chairman?
Parsons.
Bill, some of the observations about sizes of cities as they grow, the form of government seems to be shifting to that of a strong mayor. And the fellow who came from the city managers national organization and spoke with us at lunch indicated that it was his feeling that council manager forms of government tended to work best as a corporation for a stable community, and that the strong mayor concept seems to be one that is coming in more and more for expanding areas, and that when the city is essentially stable, that the council manager form seems to be best.
Well, Jim, you can go to, and I have attended many of the National League of Cities conventions, and more communities are going to the council-man your form of government. It's effective all over the country. And this is the only area that I know of where we're trying to adopt, I think, more or less a ward system here, if you want to call it that, because you're going to have a strong man who's going to be appointing all the department heads and everything else. And we don't have a check and balance on the thing. In the city council, you do it the rest of the time.
Would you state your name for the record?
Kevin O'Leary. What's the amount of time left on the debt on the utilities? How much longer are does the debt last? 30 years, 40 years? Do you have any idea?
Do you have the length? No. I think we have some 10 years, some...
Probably your average life of the bond is about 14 years. So at that point, the debt would be amortized and the municipality would then be owned by the city, is that correct?
Well, except that you're expanding continually, so you never have to.
You never have to.
Would be amortized, that's all right?
There'd be new debt incurred, but it would presumably be incurred by the entire area.
Well, that's what I'm saying, if you put a provision there to allow for the payment of the bonds now owed by the city in your charter here, that you can pay them off for the next 14 years, and at that point in time, when they are paid off, excluding the expansion that takes place after the new government is formed, then the municipality can become totally area wide. That's the major issue, paying for the back debt.
Well, that statute that Mrs. President speaks of is that the same thing in the administrative code, municipal code? Is that what you've taken it?
Well, no, that comes from the, quote, unification of local government.
From the unification article.
The article itself, it sets up the charter commission and the whole...
I had a feeling that thing was clarified in the municipal code, because it's extremely unfair to take either the water or sewer system, water especially. There's even general obligation bonds on the water. But the way this reads, the water stays in the city, we have to pay off the revenue, yet we have no control over the operation of the water. And we have to definitely pay the general obligation bond, which we're paying on now.
Lisa, I view as specific point. I'd like to get on to the rest of the people as soon as we can. Thank you. Bill, are you?
I'm through.
I noticed, Bill, that you had something written there, and we'd appreciate anything that you have written that you can give to us. And same, Mayor Sullivan, if you have any written comments other than those that you've given us, we appreciate it. Is there someone else here to be heard? Would you speak and state your name?
My name is Robert Ely, and I'm a resident of the city of Anchorage. I have read the charter twice, and I'm a lawyer, and I just have 2 or 3 comments and questions. The first being with respect to the initial assembly districts. I didn't see anything in the transitional provisions that told us what the initial districts were going to be that our assembly members were going to be elected from. Is that a secret?
There's no way to be succinct on it. The former charter, of course, carried a map, and we have now that the Eagle River Borough is back, there will need to be a new vote on reapportionment. And there are several ways that this could be accomplished. One, that there are many complications. it is necessary to take a reapportionment map to the voters after the ruling in the court case a year ago. So it's either going to have to be a part of the charter, or the borough would bring the reapportionment issue to a vote, and then the charter could, by reference, adopt the outcome of that. So that is a matter that is not before you at this time, but it will be before you, a specific map, or if there are other proposals that are also brought forward. Conceivably, if we adopted, say, the assembly action, they could come forward with several different proposals on which the voter would be allowed to vote.
Well, I don't understand what the districts are going to be from which the initial assembly is going to be. Is it going to be a codicil to this that will be
the actual
initial boundaries to be proposed by the commission, and then there'll be a reapportionment by the new assembly after they've been elected?
No, that the reapportionment issue would either be done at the same time, say we could make it a part, the reapportionment map could be made a part of the charter, and you vote for the charter and it would include the map. Or the assembly could bring it at the same time that the charter is, or preceding the charter vote, for a reapportionment map. So you vote on a specific map, and then we could incorporate that in the charter.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Bailey, are you questioning whether the vote on which this charter, what districting will take effect in the vote on this charter? Is that what you're questioning?
No, where will you file from?
Oh, they have not elected at the same time. I'm sorry, Bob. The charter election is held
In August.
Well, let's assume it's in August.
You have to file. For what districts do you file?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Fisher?
we don't have the map prepared yet. It is being prepared.
So you're going to propose an initial districting of the borough?
One way or another,
And then
yes.
you'll enact, the new assembly will enact a reapportionment ordinance, and then it'll be reapportioned legally after that.
Well, one way or another, either there'll be a map included with this charter, which we do not have presently. We're in the process of preparing, or it will be proposed, have already been proposed by the assembly and been in fact accomplished, and we will have adopted it.
What assembly?
The previous assembly.
Assembly.
Existing assembly.
Mr. Chairman, you see, by law, the present assembly has to reapportion within a certain length of time. So they have to have a reapportionment whether or not the charter goes. So we have to have a reapportionment separate from the charter.
You're going to have some lines.
And it looks like it might be desirable to completely separate the apportionment from the charter, because the present borough, if it still lasts, has to have an apportionment. Now, if you just put an apportionment in the charter, that would not solve the situation if the charter failed. So it looks quite probable like it would be better to have it separate from the charter. And whether there will be one choice or two choice or three choice, the Charter Commission hasn't made its recommendation to the Assembly. The Assembly hasn't made its decision whether to accept the Charter Commission's recommendation or to go ahead on their own proposals. Now, say they didn't agree with what the Charter Commission proposes, the Charter could include an apportionment within itself in addition to the ones that the Assembly puts on the ballot, if they wished. In other words, apportioning has to be done whether or not the charter passes.
I don't understand why. Why is it an appropriate time for voters to vote on reapportionment twice? Is that a Supreme Court decision?
Yes. There was the ruling when this got into the situation between the city and the borough as to the manner in which the assembly was composed with representatives from the city council. And there is a state, the way the state ruling is, as I understand, was determined that all maps must go, all reapportionment maps must go to a public vote.
Approved by a public vote.
Big chess game.
I can see.
Well, it's interesting.
Is there
What
further
about
question?
yes, is it determined already which part of the borough will have the one rather than two representatives?
Two
rather than three?
No, not determined, because the districting has not taken place.
Districting plan.
Well, yeah, Mr. Chairman, my understanding was that our proposal that's going to be outlined to us by the borough includes the two-man district in the south area, Anchorage.
I don't think that was determined.
That wasn't
I don't think that was.
Well, something's been determined because we gave instructions to them to do it one way or another, and I thought that was moved in.
Going on now, section 1406, having to do with notice of claims. I'm not involved regularly in personal injury litigation, but it seems to me that technical deadlines generally do not promote the interests of justice for either an injured employee or a claimant against a municipality or a claimant in the court system. And particularly in an injury situation, often an injured person doesn't have a lawyer within 4 months to file a claim, or is still in the hospital and worrying about his medical problems and not where he's going to get, whether he's going to get reimbursed from the city of Anchorage. It seems to me that it seems to me having 4 months to notify the city or the municipality is a very short time. Is that modeled after the present city claim ordinance?
Anyone wish to address that?
It seemed to me it was in the city, and I'm digging.
4 months now in the city.
But I question the same thing. I'd have to say that my knowledge is that there's been no complaints about not getting the file in time, but it seems like a restrictive thing, and I agree, and I raised the question.
Let me...
There's a 2-year state statute of limitation, and why a municipality...
Yeah, but it's notice only. It does not bar or impact the amount of
But
time.
sometimes you find out at a cocktail party a year and a half after your automobile accident that there's a recent Supreme Court decision that makes you a right of action on something like that. That's why there's a 2-year state statute of limitation for people who bring certain kinds of claims and a 6-year statute of limitation for other things. It seems to me 4 months is unduly restricted.
Freely, I'll refer to Rick. We discussed this on the basis that, as I recall it, that there was where a person was injured and was in the hospital or incapacitated, it couldn't. There was other law that kept us from enforcing this section. Is that correct?
My impression is that that's not true. That this is a condition preceding, and the litigants against the city of Anchorage have been knocked out of court because they failed to follow the ordinance procedure. And it's in addition to whatever the state statute of limitation may be.
I don't know that Rick has had an opportunity to...
Mr. Chairman, I think basically what Bob's presenting to the commission is the policy question of whether it's a good idea. As to the legality of it, this particular type of provision has been upheld by our Supreme Court in a similar Ketchikan case. I believe our Supreme Court has also said that where you have this type of notice requirement, it is suspended during a period of legal disability following from an accident or a physical disability to do the required thing. I'm not sure what other aspect of the question there was, but I don't. When this was discussed with some of the municipal people that we talked to, the other side of the coin was that there was some concern that where you had an accident or an occurrence involving municipal employees, with the high rate of turnover of employees who were involved and so forth, there was a fairly real danger of the claim becoming very stale from the point of view of defense if it were delayed without any sort of notification for the full 2-year period. And I assume that's the policy, such as it supports this type of provision.
I would urge the commission to think about that policy. Alyesko or lots of Alaska Railroad, the state of Alaska, many other target defendants in the state of Alaska operate, I think, satisfactorily with the state statute of limitation provisions, which are in the front of the jurisdiction section of the code. I would think 2-year preliminary statute of limitation and a longer contracts statute of limitations would work for the municipality. And I've never understood the city of Anchorage code provision.
With almost identical section.
Yeah, it's an identical section. It seems to me I don't know what the reason was years ago that it was adopted. And it makes, from the point of view of the city's experience, work effectively. And I'm sure it does because it cuts off a lot of people who discover their rights more than 4 months after the event. So I would just ask you to consider the public policy, which the legislature has also thought about, and I think the court system and the lawyers would testify that it's also satisfactory.
The lawyer on our body agrees with you.
Also, turning to the amendment section, which Mayor Sullivan pointed out, why did you select the majority rather than a larger 2/3? Number 4 amendment, 15.01. Seems to me the concept of a charter is that it's a pretty permanent document, and that you want to have a very tough procedure and an overwhelming public opinion before you subject it to amendment on a very regular basis. It seems to me it's easy to get a majority of the people voting in an election to vote on most anything except something that receives an enormous amount of controversial publicity. And that you might discover that the charter is constantly being tinkered with by an uninformed electorate rather than the kind of electorate that would have to vote in a 2/3 vote.
Mr. Chairman, I think that if you followed that through to its logical conclusion, then we would have to vote for this unification on greater than a majority, this original charter on a greater than a majority, if you follow that through to its logical conclusion.
Well, isn't that vote governed by the state statute?
Yes, it is. And it doesn't call for larger than a majority.
Right, but that doesn't bind the state statute.
No, it does not bind us.
No.
Whether or not the charter commission would adopt it. You still are free to determine how difficult it should be in the future for people to tinker with the charter. I mean, after all, the charter commission procedure is a long, involved, well thought out, staffed, heavily politicized proceeding, and these regular charter amendment activities are not subject to the same kind of thoughtful, thorough, careful, analyzed.
I'm going to call next on Sherry Holmes, then Dick Fisher, then Mr. Meeks.
Bob, I appreciate the fact that you want what we do to be active and go somewhere. In looking back at the city charter, I find that it requires only a majority vote to amend the charter. And I whispered across the room to the mayor, and he tells me it has not been amended.
Never has.
So in theory, I think you're right. If we do our job well, then maybe they won't think of it.
Mr. Chairman, I'm addressing this to the commission, please. Fortunately, we have quite a few people in the audience tonight, and I really appreciate the people showing up. I'd like to get to them all and get home at a reasonable hour. I think the commission should refrain from arguing with its point of view with the people that present their argument, their point of view. If there's some information that we can give, and any one of us, I think we should certainly offer it, but let's kindly not argue with the people that are testifying. So, Mr. Okay.
I'll now ask for Mr. Meeker.
I have a note on the same thing, and I just want to bring it out at this particular time, that where he suggested that you change the amount of the vote of the majority of the people. I suggest just the opposite. I think you should have a two-thirds majority assembly to make an amendment. Then before the vote of the people. And that's what 3%. I think that would solidify. And I agree with him that the charter should be subject to the Constitution. It should be a little bit tougher to change it than every single night. Now, although the facts are that the city ordinance hasn't been changed or the city charter hasn't been changed, I think it hasn't been changed because most people are unaware of the fact how easy it is to change it. If they were aware of the fact it only took a majority vote, bingo, there would have been a lot of changes. And everybody knows how this charter works right now. At least the people who will all read your paper and this and that, and they'll find out. And we will have a lot of changes unless you require two-thirds vote of the assembly to make an amendment. And I would suggest that change. That's one. Anyone can find anything else.
Mr. Ely had the floor.
I have one more point. With respect to the access and liabilities section, also, I question the mayor why we stopped short of taking over or spreading the debt of the sewage collection system and the water distribution system area-wide. I can appreciate that the streets benefit the neighborhood or the block, but it seems to me that the telephone, all the other utilities are not really distinguishable from the water system and sewage collection system. And isn't the answer to Mr. Besser's objection that the debts of the utilities are being assumed area-wide? I read this as assumed debts area-wide.
I gathered that was
That is
one of the
correct.
bases.
The city of Anchorage is being left with the debt of the telephone system. It's being assumed by the entire borough, which is also getting the asset.
His point is that they're losing profit.
That's right. Exactly right. You're losing about 4 mills, equivalent of 4 mills.
Is there other discussion? Mr. Wood?
I would address my remarks to Article 16 under transition. I would suspect that no matter how good the document is, that finally approved, the biggest problems are going to come during the transition period. And I would suggest the simpler you make the transition period, the easier it's going to be to go into it. I can see no reason down under on B there, says for the purpose of the election of the first mayor and assembly and school board under this charter. Why not just have an election of the mayor and assembly? Let the present school board carry on under its same term. Why is it necessary to have an entirely new school board be elected all at one time, take over one of the biggest jobs in the whole community? Mr. Chairman. Not only, well, it is the biggest job. When you look at your budget, that's where 90% of the money can go.
Ross, we have had that criticism, that suggestion before, and I think we are going to change that.
There's very strong feeling on that. We had a couple of members who felt pretty strongly on that, and kind of like the balloon you put up. And there are very few balloons in here, but I think that perhaps was
There isn't any real necessity to elect a new school board, is there?
not really, because you have an area wide. There were 2 of those elected at the last election when Eagle River was out, but I don't think there's a legal. We've heard of no legal question.
It's a good point.
That's all I would say.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Would you name give your name and...
I have 2 comments and a question. One comment I wanted to make was on the problem of attendance. I don't know if you're aware of the student paper
but it says, although attendance last night's meeting was light, the commission voiced hope for the four remaining hearings would get and one public meetings are scheduled for tonight at Little Crest Elementary.
We heard about that after we got here.
And it says this meeting is scheduled for next Thursday. So that's why.
Better be here next Thursday.
Evie, I don't think we can do anything to say except say that we regret it even more than you do.
There were a lot of people who moved.
I was there too. Did you see me?
A lot of people, that's one of the things that we're looking for this year. There's also a meeting at this time in the library about
There was about 21 hours there, Frank, but nobody knew where it was tonight, but I found a little man that finally did. So now they're telling them, but it's too late.
Well, I think we'll try and hold as many hearings as there are people who want to be heard.
All right. Your other comments?
I had one other question. I think there's some general confusion on the reserve service area. The impression I've gotten from talking to people after reading this is that once unification takes place, there will be everyone will be a service area, and the services provided now by the city, for instance, Bernard, like the police protection will be primarily wide. And I know that this is a misconception today, shared by the troopers and the city, because that's the impression that we were operating between the officers. I think there's a confusion in that respect. And the question I had was under 16.04 subsection B, says pension plans, retirement plans, collective bargaining agreements, and other existing employee agreements will not be diminished by adoption of this pending adoption of administrative code. Please explain that, what that means. The question I have is there are so many different pension plans now within the city of Anchorage. Does that mean that they will be maintained under the government?
The basic intent was not to disturb existing pension plans. So that we did have comment last night that some departments were under Social Security. They hoped that we would look at the possibility of dropping the Social Security because that was in excess of their need. The pension plans were adequate. So this is one area that we do have to look at and have had comment on. We don't know some of the legality of dropping out of Social Security. And
might I make a suggestion?
Yes.
I know that the police department's employees association has been actively pursuing that for over a year and a half now. They have some new expertise and the documents available. You might be able to obtain it through Bill Bennett.
Bill Dennis. Bill Bennett.
Dennis Kingsley. The research has already been done in that area.
Well, we appreciate that suggestion because we know it is a problem where people are expending money they don't think is necessary to expend because they're taking care of it otherwise. Did you have any? Ms. Monroe?
Yes, I'm here on the Rock, and I've represented the South Division for some years. I'm running this evening just to speak in favor of one of your items, section 3, or one, the composition of the assembly in the multi-member district. Having been one that for recent years favored at-large or at-large representation of some districts, I find this a very happy solution to the 2 points of view of single-member districts and those who would rather have the mayor and I and others either at-large or at-large in districts. I think this is a very good solution to that problem and will strengthen the unification of the area. It would be very sad to see it to be in single-member districts. But then until you move further and further away, really unification has more the fears of the ward systems that people have mentioned. then you only have one chance every 3 years to represent a country. Bill and record seems strong in favor of this provision. I've been out of town, so I haven't really seen this document in detail until I came this evening. I've learned quite a bit since I've been here. Now I really have a question back on the school fiscal year. I know we spent some time going back and forth here with Mayor Sullivan on this, but I really didn't end up clear in my mind that if the school district was to be on a different fiscal year, then in September, 120 days prior to the assembly fiscal year, the school district is presenting their budget for what year? I mean, I say it's next September, they're submitting a budget for their fiscal year 76.
We've talked to the financial people. They indicated that it would actually be, if I'm correct on this, half of one fiscal year and half of the other fiscal year. Is that Larry?
I think that Frank's mistaken on that. The school board would present their budget about in October because the municipality's budget fiscal year ends at the end of December. But the budget they're proposing is yes, it is. He is right. It is from
January 1 to June 30, and June 30 to January 1 of the following year.
Oh, we're going to have to clear that out. You're right, because we have not specified whether it was from the July of their fiscal year, their following fiscal year, or whether it was the fiscal year of the municipality. And this is not specified. We've got to correct that.
So they would be a full 6 months ahead.
Yes.
So it would be in September or October, they would be submitting the budget for July.
July to July, or
following, yeah.
To July 77.
That was the way that we were talking about it with the school board, because even now they say that they would have very little trouble if they were doing it, getting their figure, their definite figure, that it'd help them to have their definite figure in October or November rather than in April.
So that would be 6 months.
They would be 6 months ahead of time in their budget.
In their forecast. Because I am
Yes.
one of these people that
Yes.
you remember when you had to adopt your local school budget prior to the time you got your state funding.
Yeah.
Difficulties in that situation. It's actually necessary that two fiscal years.
Well, the state says when we have to have the school fiscal year, we would have no choice on that, and the folks that are working with public works and trying to get in construction done, they say the time of year for a fiscal year to end is at the quiet time of the year for the major part of the work you're doing. And with utilities and roads, the quiet time of year is in the middle of the winter. So that's the reason they want the fiscal year to end then for the municipality. Yes, there is some problem on the school district with their being budgeting ahead of their receiving the funds, but on some of these things, last year the Assembly dictated that they'd have to use their federal grants. They couldn't appropriate them until after they got them. In other words, that would make them a year behind in using them. So they're meeting this sort of a problem. It is a problem, true, but there's no time of year that you can make it that it isn't a problem for somebody.
Do you have other?
That. You're right. We've had the questions raised by the attorney, so we're getting them together with the borough attorney or not the borough attorney, but the borough finance director. See if we can't get some more clarification.
Did you have anything further, Maria?
No.
Would you name it?
Mr. Chairman, my name is Jerry Roguska. Under section 101, the municipality shall be known as Anchorage. It seems to me that we can count. I don't recall it a city, I don't call it the borough of Anchorage. Now, you call it the borough, take it out of the borough or something.
Can't we just leave that silent and come back to that and it can evolve into something?
I, too, would support city council manager government that here, the way it exists in city of Acton is operating extremely satisfactorily. Along with this would be the municipal attorney who was appointed by the mayor for the assembly. Again, I would prefer to see the mayor appointed by the assembly. The city attorney. Yes, the city attorney. Section 3.19 on ombudsman, I would assume that could be better taken care of something by ordinance rather than by the charter here. Provide for a document. Article 5, the entire Article 5, I think I have a suggestion for that, is by replacing Article 5 by a blank space, and remember the article council or situation, diluting the powers of the assembly. It would seem to me that the assembly can very well take care of its responsibilities in good direction and leadership to the community without skirting around and having everybody voting on something, electing various types of representatives that can lend to I would object to the community council section here. I would, under education item number 9, I'd like to see a 9-member school board there. It seems like the school board is overseeing probably the largest portion of the budget. I think this year is close to $90 million, and 7 is a rather small number of persons.
Gary, that's required by state law.
7?
Yeah.
Well, then that's what that changes to.
Well, that's odd. Do that.
With that, taken care of. That's the only objection.
It might be desirable to stay silent on the number of board members so that it would be easily changed if the state law were changed.
Oh, that's all right. Certainly to increase the number. Certainly increase the number. Section 1104, assessment district. 11. That's what I think that's a little bit more flax than that. But the means of levy and services proportionate to the benefit received and the burden imposed on can be shown definitely that there may not be, or a lesser burden. However, the fact that there may be the same kind of burden imposed or an equal burden as someone else, whatever service it happens to be. I suppose if one has less fires, he is imposing less of a burden on the service district. therefore subject to a lesser levy. I think that is not too clear, or certainly the entire assessment district section rewritten.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak to that? Sometimes assessment districts have been used in California where they are road improvement districts where they have used the allocation, engineering allocation that they used in the original road assessment district in relation to keeping up lights and that sort of thing. And this was to allow that type of assessment district in addition to the other, that type of a service district in addition to the other type of service district, because it might very well be a more equitable way of paying for some kinds of services.
More problem. I think mine will go over, Chairman. Other sentiments on the assets and the assets of the city of Anchorage being a freebie for the rest of the borough, contrary to what the existing assets, or what one may think is the difference between the assets and the liabilities now, which may be only a few $1 million. Nevertheless, it's a matter of the profits, very frankly, that are being made today on the utilities and even a possible sale price. The assets don't necessarily reflect the sale price. And, I certainly am not worried about the $30 or so million in difference as far as the debt is concerned. It's the, as again pointed out, the profits that are returned to the owners of the utility. I certainly wouldn't want to give any other kind of a business away, and I just would not agree to giving the business to the world.
The one thing I think in annexation, you do this. However, you do spread the debt, which we're not doing here. I think that was, well, I wasn't here, I won't speak for him, but I thought that was his point. Jim?
Mr. Chairman?
Sherry?
I think Rick had a point of clarification on that.
Well, it's not a big deal, Mr. Chairman. As I understand it, I agree with Bob Ely when he said that the provision as written provides for the area-wide distribution of assets and liabilities, with the exception of water, sewer, and roads. That exception is mandated by the statute for one reason or another, and we can't do anything about it. But I think that's the long and short of it. Garbage is
No, just those.
I bet it's depends who you take your garbage from.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rogaska. Is there anyone else who wishes to? Mr. Meekin?
I'll make mine short. I got one most important one. That is assembly composition. Now, I think I made this point one at a time. Some of the members of the commission were there. You're forming 11-member assembly, and I don't know how you're going to sell that to the people, because it's all well and good for everybody to come to these meetings, and for you people who understand this charter perfectly, and so on and so forth. And the few residents that will actually read this through 2 or 3 times and then understand it when they do read it, but so far, you haven't sold public anything. And I've been a salesman all my life. And I think that what you need is a sales job. You got to sell them something. You got to tell them we're going to do something for you. If you don't, this thing isn't going to cut the water. And what you can do is tell them one thing. I've had more complaints in the last 26 years or 29 years of people who had to go before the Assembly or the City Council, either one, for some item or article, and they said, well, God only knows when we're going to be heard. It's 8 weeks before we get on the thing, and then we got to go to the meeting and stay up to 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning maybe, and listen to everybody else's paraphernalia, woes, and all that stuff before they finally get around to hearing yours. Now, if we can sell to people that they're not going to have to do that, you're going to improve that some way. Well, then I think you got a sales point. I think that's something you can really sell to people in this city, in this area, and they'll go for it, in spite of all the other little questions that brought up here tonight. And the thing I'm saying is what you have to do is to increase this number from 11 to a greater number. Now, first of all, we have 9 members on the City Council, and we've got 11 members on the Borough Assembly, which happens to be 20, and you're cutting it down to 11. We've got less people to talk to now on our problems, less individuals to call, and we got less people doing a hell of a lot bigger job. I don't see I personally don't see you wouldn't do this in business, you wouldn't cut down the number of people doing a job if you were increasing the workload. And I don't see how you're going to do that. Now you're also saying we're only going to meet maybe once or twice a month. Wow. Some sessions are going to go for 3 or 4 days straight, like 48 hours, maybe. But because I don't know how you're going to accomplish the business. The only other system you can do is go to the same system you have in other councils throughout the nation, and that is a committee system. And in order to go to a committee system, you will have to increase your membership to 17 at the minimum, and possibly 21, which would only be one more than you got right now. You have 21 members of the Assembly. Then you go to the committee system. The committees meet once each week. And then the General Assembly meets once or twice a month. And that way, the workload is going to be shifted out. You know, I would much rather go before Mr. Parsons as chairman of a committee if I got a problem with my sewer. And he happens to be, and that's given to his committee. And we'll talk to him, and he can listen to my problem, understand, and so forth. And I don't have to tell it to the 9-man bureau who could care less and are worried about sleeping. What the hell when we go home? It's 1 o'clock. And I've been there 10 meetings, and so has everybody here, I believe. And I think what we're looking for from this Charter Commission is an improvement in that thing, and then we can sell it to the public. If you don't have it, I don't know what you're going to sell them with, because so far I haven't found a sellable item in here. I haven't found one that's really go on TV and sell it. I'm telling you, I can't find one. I'm a salesman.
Thank you for your comment.
Sure, sweet.
Gene Smith. Will you give your name, please?
Gene Smith. I just have a few comments. One, I would like to see the legislative body called council rather than assembly. Many of us assembly have sort of that connotation. We don't have to think highly of our borough. So I would see that called.
We talked about legislative body and all sorts of things, kind of a poll and just sort of bogged down.
I think council.
You like council?
Councilman might be more acceptable than assemblyman.
Council
It's
person.
just a matter of semantics, you know, how do you think about it? Am I correct in thinking that although you will have the legislators elected from districts, will they be voted on area-wide, or will they be voted on only by them?
By districts.
That's this draft anyway.
This draft.
I strongly object to that. I think that all of this should vote on everybody. If you want to have them run from districts, that's fine, but I certainly strongly feel that everybody should get a whack at it. The city isn't that large yet, but you don't have a pretty good idea, something about who's running. And I certainly feel disenfranchised the last few times I've gone to vote, and I could only vote for a couple of guys in my district whom I didn't know from hole in the ground, you know, but I knew several people running in other districts, but there's nothing I could do about it. I just feel that my vote has been very much diluted by whoever came up with that idea. I certainly would like to see the ombudsman section removed. I can see no purpose in that. I guess there is one for the borough now. What he does or has done to draw paychecks, I don't think any of us know. I'd be most interested to know what problems he has encountered and what problems he has solved. If you are going to put it in there, then I would say it ought to be mandatory that once a month, somehow, the list of problems he has met and conquered should be made known. Now, maybe that sounds silly, but I think there's a certain amount of merit in it.
I think this is the current practice with the borough. He reports. He reports monthly.
To the assembly.
To the legislature.
Who are...
Public who are paying his taxes. Do we ever know what the problems were? What? There was?
And also in the distribution that comes out from the planning department, there were very specific cases mentioned, but I don't know if it's on a mandatory. You'd perhaps appreciate seeing that not as a mandatory, but a permissive, if it's in there at all.
Somehow, I think the public should be made aware. If it's going to be, my first preference is to just scratch the whole thing. I feel that the manager should serve at the pleasure of the council, or whatever this body is that you're going to have, rather than the mayor. Somehow, it seems to me that there ought to be accountability to the council or assembly, whichever. I have sat at many assembly meetings where staff members were asked questions by the assemblyman, and they knew, and the assemblyman knew, and members of the audience knew that they were not getting straight answers from the employees. And one had the feeling that the employees didn't really care because they knew that the assemblyman couldn't touch them. If there's friction between the mayor and the assemblyman, I think you've got a problem. Now, who's right, who's wrong is beside the point, but somehow there ought to be some accountability of the employees to the council, and I feel, and perhaps that's one way to achieve it. In the city, does the city manager, is he accountable to the servant pleasure of the council or
That's correct.
the mayor? Well, I think there's a certain amount of merit to that, for that particular reason. You know, you hate to think that there is friction between the legislative body and the mayor, but if there is, I think there can be merit arising from that. I agree with those who have spoken in opposition to the community councils. I think that we are meeting to death in this city, and it's probably going to increase. If it's decided that there should be community councils, I surely feel that they should be advisory only. Anybody who is trying to keep up with all the many billions of meetings that there are to go to that are really relevant as far as assembly, the council, the planning commission, the planning board, these things, and then you get a community council thrown in on you that has powers to undo you, you know, unless you're there. There just aren't that many nights in the week. I don't think we need to split additional powers. If they're advisory, fine, but let's not give them any power. I was interested in this section here. Well, this is a real nitpicking thing, but maybe you can as far as in section 601, introduction and enactment of ordinances, where it says, the clerk shall publish a notice containing the text of an ordinance summary of its contents, time and place for the public hearing notice, and the time and place for copies of the ordinance are available for inspection. I read that about 6 times, and I thought, why did they just say where copies are available? Are we going to reach the point where she'll say the office will be open between the hours of 5 and 8, and you may come out and inspect this proposed ordinance at that time?
But you can't have a copy.
But you can't have a copy of it. I thought if you would delete the words for inspection, just say they're going to be available. It might be a good idea.
For inspection. Yeah.
Yeah, makes kind of sense.
Good suggestions.
Yeah.
Like it.
Well, that's a good idea.
I'll give you credit for it, Chief.
Now, actions requiring an ordinance. I read through that list, and I was surprised that there wasn't anything about zoning in there. Was it your intent to leave that out? Are we going to have a situation where zoning can be changed without ordinance? Good heavens. Well, I just want to raise that.
Take out their community.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. We didn't addict.
And I think that drop that line comes on to the next comment, which is Article 8, relative to comprehensive general plan required. I wonder why it's required to get a comprehensive general plan. I don't know how many of you have read this 193-page proposal that is floating around, in which the Assembly presumably is going to pass one of these months. That thing, to me, must have been written by Karl Marx. It was absolutely the most socialistic document I've ever read, and it scared me. And I hope the rest of you will be concerned enough that you will get a copy of it and read it. The way I read that thing, if it passes, they can change the zoning any old time they want to without public notice. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think it has implications in there. I just, maybe I don't fully understand it, but it raised a big red flag in my mind. And that was what further concerned me when I didn't see zoning listed in one of the changes of zoning listed under the ordinances that showed up for public hearing. And I was interested in Article 14, equal rights. The Assembly shall enact ordinances against invidious discrimination in housing, public accommodation, employment, education, finance, services, and all that stuff. Why not may instead of shall? Must they do it, or may they do it?
It shall.
State federal law, yeah.
When there are state and federal laws, which presumably would apply anyway.
Just like this comprehensive plan, state and federal laws require that you gotta have one to be eligible for the state and federal grants.
Wouldn't it be terrible to turn down the nickels?
Yeah?
Yourself. I think
The implication is that you are?
asked. Please state your name.
Jewel Mason. My major concern was with Article 5 with the community council's provision. The main problem being, you said, it does state here, okay, that community councils may be established, and that this will be done by ordinance. But is this to suggest that the ordinance, for instance, will spell out some sort of election procedure? Or can there be more than one council in an area? Or what is an area?
We did discuss that, and as I recall it, we even discussed the fact that there might be overlapping possibility of overlapping council. Now, what
Is an area.
you recollect the discussion, Sherry?
So the ordinance would spell out, as it says here, procedures for setting up community councils, and the present borough ordinance does speak to that problem of overlapping councils and so on. We've tried to leave as much latitude for the local legislative body to deal with the specific community councils rather than setting it up in a charter.
Mr. Chairman, not in any way to get into any debate on community council, certainly be happy to discuss it with any of you individually, but we have a very large area that we're attempting, hopefully this time we will bring together. The Eagle River Chugiak area and the Girdwood area, wishing, of course, to have some local form of government. And there's quite a strong feeling on the council or on the commission that community councils might be able to provide those outlying areas with more direct input on their government, such as the city of Girdwood, which is a first-class city, although it's not exercising many powers, feels it's completely losing. If Eagle River Chugiak is not allowed or does not choose, even though they may be allowed to form a new borough, that it would allow such things as, for instance, they have an elected board of supervisors for their fire district, which has been working in quite equitably. So this is one of the things that we saw that it might assist those areas. And it also is something that would need to be very carefully drawn, or you could get into some real problems of duplication and so on. Hopefully that would be a wise legislative body.
Mr. Chairman, I don't
Jerry.
I was directing one of that.
Well, no,
But it
I'm
would
interested
seem-
in your comments.
But it would seem that I appreciate trying to get East River, Chugiak, and some of the other areas to have representation or to be concerned about their welfare. However, that would represent a minority, and it's very possible that this article here to take care of the concerns of a very definite minority is infringing upon and I'm not quite sure that this is the method by which to go.
Joe, did you have?
Well, that was my question. I still, as I said, I don't understand exactly what an area is, and how. I mean, are we an area? Do you have to live in an area? I mean, are all those the kinds of things that are going to be set out in the ordinance itself? And because I can see 2 or 3 councils, and at the point that even there's some negotiation about supervising the furnishing of a service. I can't think offhand what kind of service that might be, but if it were no more than trash collection in the park or whatever, I could see that there could be some just incredible problems there, and it might not be as useful as it might appear to be, unless that's very, very plainly stated, and I don't think there's enough explanation for that.
Lisa?
If the commission, wishes, and we leave this article in, it will probably be strengthened, so if there is some clarification of that, the community councils are defined as to what they are, but, like the boundaries and what area is a community council. In the present form that they are set up, even not only in the Anchorage area, but in other parts of the United States, the people are allowed to establish their own boundaries. And you wouldn't have an overlapping area. And as to what type of, if they wanted to supervise a service, because of the way the state statute is set out on with regard to a service area, and if somebody wants to supervise furnishing that service to the area, the legislative body either appoints or elects, or the people in the area elect people to that board that supervises. This would be providing
Of course,
establishment.
basically we're providing it, leaving it to the council, the legislative body, assembly to prepare this. Well, I know, I don't know, did you have something, Doug, that was addressed to this question?
Okay, well, again, the point that I'm trying to make, I think for purposes of discussion of people living in a neighborhood or an area to improve the area, whatever, I think, that's great, or to have more input with the assembly. But once you get to the point of sharing power with that legislative body, whatever it may be, I can see that unless, you even set out some procedure for an election, I don't know what the value of, let's say, the meeting tonight is just, once again, there's a mistake in where the meeting is going to be held and on which night, then an awful lot of people say, well, that's not our council because we were not part of that representation, let alone supervising some sort of service. The other point being on 1402, I realized under the Equal Rights Commission that the principal executive officer of this commission would serve at the pleasure of the commission. And I understand that the State Human Rights Commission functions like this also. But you have various people in this charter serving either at the pleasure of the mayor, the clerk serving at the pleasure of the assembly. But unless you kind of set up how many people you're going to have on this commission, or either set in some due process clause for this principal executive officer, you might find that you're going to have that guy in and out, or just a number of people continuously. And I think there should be a better way. I don't know exactly what, but I think there should be a better way to at least provide for due process for that person, because serving at the pleasure of a commission is I think, probably going to be a very, very difficult thing to handle.
Mr. Chairman?
Mary?
I think that the chairman, say, of the Planning and Zoning Commission, by the pleasure of the commission, that's by the vote of the commission, who's going to act as chairman. Like we voted Frank to be our chairman. Frank's serving at our pleasure. We could unvote him. We could unvote him out of that seat away. That's what you're talking about.
I'm assuming that you're not just talking about a voluntary commission. You're talking about the executive officer.
Right. Oh, all right.
And that executive officer, being the salaried person, should have some sort of recourse to someone other than a number of people.
Okay.
Did you have some?
My name's Harry Guerin. This is the third time around on many of these. I worked on promoting the previous two charter proposals. I see many familiar faces. I've lost a lot of hair since then. You see the big fish gained some. And, a point was made a while ago about the fact that single-member districts and all that, the two previous charters proposals had single-member districts. If I recall correctly, the first one had one at-large member, and that went down. The next charter came up, it had provided for single-member districts. Both of these charters carry the city.
Yeah.
So I don't see any resistance in the city to the concept of the single-member district. At the recent election, there was an advisory poll conducted, and that, I believe, overwhelmingly showed that people like single-member representation. Now, the notion was put together a while ago that perhaps we should have people from Eagle River voting on whether I should be represented by Mr. X from my district. I take exception to that. I don't want anybody across town to come over and tell me who's going to be my representative. I want my neighbor and my friend, someone I know, to be my representative. I don't want him representing Eagle River either. I example of that, of what it can do. This can put a situation where people, your neighbors, do not have to go to great expense to be elected to the assembly. In the last election, Max Hershberger spent a very small amount of money going through his election district. He knocked on everybody's door at least twice. Now, I disagree with Mike on a lot of things, but I voted for him just because I thought it was a unique experience. If you have people who have to, even though they're coming from a single district, if they have to appeal area-wide, then you're going to get the money groups in there again, and these people are going to have to go into massive TV and media campaigns to get the approval of everybody throughout the whole borough, municipality, or whatever you want to call it, so that they can get elected from that little district. So you have the same thing as where you have people going and voting for running for the city council and appealing to everyone area-wide. Now, everywhere I come back to this, I feel that I hear people say something about an uninformed electorate. The only people in the electorate that I've ever run into who are uninformed are the ones who just don't agree with me. And
you're right.
I have a very great faith in anybody that I meet on the street will probably be as well informed as I am or as the next person. They don't show it, but when they go to the polls, they seem to me to show it. Every time that I get involved in an election, my faith in the democratic process is renewed, even though it becomes rather cynical in the meantime. Now that I've gotten rid of the battery, there is one nuts and bolts item I want to bring up, and that is, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes, because if I'm not, I'll just be frank about it. I'm afraid, Ms. Baum, aren't you on both the borough assembly?
I'm on the Borough Assembly as well as on the commission, and when I ran, I let the folks know that I was intending to serve on both.
I'm not addressing my remark to that particular situation because you are an elected person in that respect. But I would like to see something against allowing appointed municipal or government officials to run for advisory commissions, and also to prevent them from serving on boards and commissions. Now, we have a case wherein one of the borough employees in I'm trying to be diplomatic on this because I don't want to get into personality. If you get into personality, you have to be a very good friend. But in any event, this person is in an important and influential administrative position with the borough. And he is serving on one of the borough commissions at the same time. And to me, it's a conflict of interest. Conceivably, he could incur the wrath, or someone could incur his wrath through his official capacity, and then again have to run into him on that commission, which is quasi-judicial.
What I'm wondering, did we speak to that, Frank, or Mr. Chairman, and that one, that's just elected, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Not for others.
Well, I'm more afraid of the appointed ones than the elected ones.
I see your point. I don't think we talked about that.
If you do address this point, I think that you're going to have to address the level at which you want to put the cutoff. But I don't think it's good reason for anybody who is in a policy making or a strong administrative position serving in an additional advisory capacity.
Sheffield, you had some comments.
Well, I was just going to say an answer to ours. I think that we touched on it, but that's as far as we got on it.
Now, I might get over to this question of the community councils. I can understand the political reason for bringing them forward because of the area identification that many people do, but I do feel that that single-member districts would allay the necessity very much. And I want to say very strongly that I agree with Mr. Makins that the larger group he proposes would be much more saleable to the rank and file man to be elected. If he knew that his neighbor, if someone that he knew within 4 or 5 blocks of where he lived, he could look and knock on that man's door, I'm sure that he would have less reason to feel he had to have an area identification to a community council or an improvement association or anything of that nature. I won't take up any more time because I get too far off into generalities.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Are there others who would like to be heard? Mr. Millar?
Yes, I'm Doug Millar. I represent the American Independent Party. We organized a committee called the Charter Investigation Committee, and these are the things that we would like to see changed, that we would like to support the Charter, but we feel like at this time it take too much control from the people instead of, as it states in the preamble, to support individual rights. Number 1 would be Article 2 on powers. And number 201 states that all legislative powers are not prohibited by law. And we would like to see it stated that the municipality has the powers enumerated herein, because of course Article 15 allows for amendment to this document. And in section 202, the referendum states that the referendum shall not apply to ordinances, and it states which ones: the budget, the mill levies, bonds, and appropriating funds. And we feel this begs the intent of the initiative and referendum, and we don't feel there should be any limit on what people can petition the government for.
Mr. Chairman?
Harless?
I wonder if we could just stop there a minute, because, that's really kind of an interesting point of view. What would happen to government, Doug, and again, not to argue, but just to think that through. Let's assume that we go through the budgetary process, we set a mill levy, and as the case is now, we're very close to getting a fiscal year to operate. Then slowly a movement begins, and some 6 months or 8 months hence we get into a referendum situation. What happens to the stability, the ability of government to function if that issue of the budget is brought to the voter? It just seems to me that it could create complete chaos to government.
Well, it's possible it could, and therefore this 10% it states here for the process probably should be 25%. In other words, it would be pretty easy to get people stood on maybe 10%, but at the same time, 25% of people petition the government because they're unhappy with the mill rates, etc. The community government should take another look at what they're enforcing on the people.
I would hope that you might, because we'd like your support, frankly, to find those ways. But to look into, say, talking to some bond counsel and so on, we get into some horrendous, I think there are very valid reasons for having this, and I would hope you would investigate that kind of fully. It's really a difficult area if I think you have those subject to referendum.
To discuss it.
Yeah, great.
Then down in section 203, the recall, states that the person can be recalled about 25% of the voters. And we'd like to see that changed to 10% to put them up for recall.
Say that again.
States that 25% of people must petition for recall. And if 10% of people are so hostile that they're willing to go out and sign the petition and carry it around, then it should be 10%, not 25%. Because 25% in effect says there will be no recalls, virtually because you can't get that people concerned about one individual's actions unless one of those neurotics refusal to participate in the borough.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak to that. the number of people that voted in the last assembly election out our way, I could get the 25%. If I wanted 25%, I could probably get it in less than a week. It's not that horrendous. You go to the clerk and find out how many vote in any one assembly election. You see, presently you have to have, over 40% of the vote to have been considered elected as an assemblyman. Well, the total vote in that area isn't going to be that tremendous. So 25% really isn't bad.
Because it's 40% now, but we've written this later on, I don't know if you did that you don't have any requirement of a runoff, and therefore it doesn't even require 40%. In fact, the person could run and get 25%.
That's true.
Minority vote. The incumbent has a real advantage. The audience that will put it down to
Agreed.
Under the Assembly, Article 3, powers, members, and we feel that there's no reason that they should serve really for 3 years. We'd like to see it 2 years with half of them up for re-election each year, giving people a little more control over their assembly. And also, we'd like to see single-member districts because according to the polls that you've taken and the public vote, over 50% of people support single-member districts or that basic concept. And we encourage participation in the government instead of not knowing your representative on such a, be much more personal representation that way. Under section 305, filling vacancies, I'll skip that. The next one is under Article 4, the executive branch, section 401D, states the mayor shall be allowed to serve for 2 consecutive terms. And we feel that with the authority you're giving him in this document, that no person should be qualified to run for more than 2 terms, period. Because you propose to also have a manager under the mayor, and it's conceivable that that person could also have political inclinations, and they could run and alternate, and they could stay in power for 30 or 40 years just by alternating their terms.
Suspicious.
You know what that's They're going to get you with the section 405, manager. The manager shall serve at the pleasure of the mayor, and we feel that gives the mayor too much authority, and we definitely support the concept that he be hired and controlled by the assembly, not at the pleasure of the mayor. Okay. Oh, sure. Would be his administration?
Yeah, we would be his staff. We would be the mayor, people hiring, the manager controlled by the assembly, and we would be supporting our conference.
Occasionally, but we had usually checks and balances that we have in the federal government level. Veto power.
Mr. Mayor said he wanted to have that veto power.
I said I'd love to have it, but I think it's too strong on a local level where you meet everything.
Well, I'm So I misunderstood you. You meant veto or power over the hiring of the manager?
Veto power over the
Well, then you still can provide a two-thirds vote to override the mayor. If you can't get a two-thirds vote, then it probably shouldn't be an ordinance or a regulation.
That's right.
Okay, under Article 5, community councils. We like the concept of community councils, but it states they're sharing the rights and powers, but that's already been stated quite often. We feel that's very dangerous, and that they should be advisory only. Under Article 6, legislation. Section 3, there about the middle, it states that the ordinance would have an informative summary of its contents. And we feel that if we're going to be voting on ordinances, that they should have the entire ordinance printed. And people aren't willing to read that before they vote on it, then maybe they shouldn't even be voting on the issue. Then under section 602, action requiring an ordinance, subtitle 3 there, authorize borrowing of money. We do not feel that this should be an ordinance, but should be only by a vote of the people. Under subsection 8 there, conveying in real estate the dedication of public park for recreation purposes. It says it should be only by a valid vote of the majority of the people in election. We'd like to see that for any public purpose instead of just for parks and recreation. Section 603, under Article 7, elections, Section 702, the election procedure. As I mentioned earlier, we feel that there should definitely be a provision for runoffs because we do not feel that a person who does not get a majority of the vote should have the privilege of representing anyone. And we only like the idea of 40%, but we'd like to see a majority vote for an individual or a runoff required at that time. Article 8, under planning and comprehensive plan, I've only talked to one elected official on it, Ben Leonard, talked to me at 5 in detail, and says it's a very dangerous document that is now proposed to be really imposed on people. And hopefully there's a lot of discussion about that and the amendment. Article 9, education, the school board, they should be elected at large. We'd also like to see the school board elected in single districts.
Thank you for coming.
Article 10, finance, section 1003, operating capital budget. It says the mayor should submit an analysis of the financial implications, which of course is good. We'd like to also see it spelled out on a per taxpayer basis so that people can appreciate what kind of taxes that we're talking about. Under section 1006 states that if revenues exceed the budget estimates, the Assembly may make supplementary appropriations. To spend that money. And we don't see any need for something like that. It's not kind of nice if the government would change, save that money and reduce our taxes the following year. That's the way to spend everything you can get your hands on. Section B, in the same section there, subsection B, talks about emergency appropriations. Funds available are sufficient, etc., but they'll be able to authorize notes. And we say no, we feel they should cut the non-essentials rather than spending more money. without a word of people. Section 1007, reduction and transfer of appropriations, subsection B, states the mayor may transfer any municipal department, etc. The school board may transfer funds, and also the assembly may transfer. We don't feel there should be any transfer of any funds except for an emergency. Then we feel that there should be a section 1012 added, stating something to the effect, and it's in two parts. A would be that no funds will be given to charitable groups nor to other government entities. And it would be no funds from the state or the federal government shall be accepted with guidelines or controls. In Article 11 on taxation, Section 1101B states that no sales tax ordinance should be valid except without a vote. We feel it should say no new tax ordinance. Why just say sales tax? For sales, it's a new tax. And under Section 1102C, talks about taxation regarding property taxes. It implies that property taxes will be with us in perpetuity, and we don't feel that's necessary to put in here because with the money coming on stream from the North Slope revenues, we would like to see a phasing out of the property taxes. There's, we feel like Section 1105 should be added at this time to limit the mill rate. Under Article 12, Section 1201 on municipal borrowing, we'd like to see you add that municipality may borrow money for any public purpose, etc., and add the words effect in the form of general obligation and revenue bonds only. In other words, we'd like to see you limit the government of not issuing trust notes as New York City did, circumventing the intent of the charter and also the people, and then ending up spending money that you weren't authorized to do, or should say the government is not authorized to do. Because as we know now, New York City is virtually bankrupt. Section 1202, limitations, states that no general obligation bond indebtedness, I'd like to see it added in there, or revenue bond indebtedness. And then this refunding bonds, we've never heard that term before. I'd like to have it explained. I would assume we're talking about bonds that were not used, or money that were not used, but what is the definition of refunding bonds?
Your refunding bonds, Doug, would be a case where a bond issue needed, was bearing a high interest rate dropped. You might want to go into the marketplace and refund those bonds, replace them with lower interest rate bonds, or you might have too short a term for your financial situation at the time, and you might want to extend that term by refunding the bonds. It is not for bonds that have not been used. It is for bonds that have been sold and you are refunding.
In most cases, Mr. Chairman, when you refund them, they also bring up, you refund them under the new procedure, you can buy treasury notes or something like that to support them when you bring your bond up to a AAA. Even though it's a B1, BAA1 or something.
So you can get a much better rate that way.
And we refunded 40 million water and 23 million.
And saved.
It is basically a financial maneuver to save money. In one instance, I understood, saved over $8 million on a bond, over the life of the bonds.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Section 1205, there are actions challenging the validity of obligations. States that they shall be instituted only within 30 days after the adoption of the ordinance or resolution. And we'd like to see that allowed that people will be able to do so until the bonds are sold. And as part of the tax levy, it should be able to be challenged at any time. With due process. We'd like to see something like 1207 added. There could be a minimum borrowing, but we didn't go into any detail on that. Under Section 13, municipal utilities, Section 1301, this will make everybody happy. I shouldn't say that, but municipal utilities, we feel that they should be sold and that indebtedness retired. We feel that they should be sold to private enterprise. We feel the gas company has a monopoly in town, but they've done a good job with it because of the controls on them, and there's no reason that the municipality utilities should be controlled by the government. Article 14, general provisions, there's section 1401 for rights, states, as Gene Smith pointed out, that the Assembly shall enact ordinances against discrimination, and it points out employment, age, and marital status. What of course we know is happening in other communities throughout the nation. The employers no longer can dictate the attire their employees shall wear or their appearance, and we feel the employer should have this prerogative. And as far as landlords, you stay here, in fact, they will only be able to discriminate as far as marital status, age, whatever. I mean, it gets to the point where the people who are the backbone of most employment in every community are losing all protection of their own business interests. And we feel that's a very dangerous precedent to start labeling things like that in there, stating that shall be done. Section 1404, prohibitions. States that the elected official may not hold any other elected office or municipal employment. And that's good. But then you state later on in the same section that the independent contractor who is not a municipal employee, is not defined as that, is allowed to have competitive bidding. And we feel that he should also be excluded in this section. He should not be allowed to get involved in competitive bidding. Okay, and in section 1405, public meetings, talk about the executive session, and of course it's important to have that. But we feel the minutes should be published at a later date when they no longer adversely affect the finances of the municipality, or unless possibly may defame the innocent citizen. In the section of the minutes to read. So we feel the public has now should be allowed to know what's going on with these governments at all levels. 1406, the notice of claims states that no claim other than within 4 months of the injury. And we don't feel this should be a limitation because it should state that a reasonable time within 4 months. And then let the courts decide what a reasonable time is, because we know there can be a problem occurring after 4 months. The section 1407, the oaths of office, we'd like to get it broad to include they take oath to support and defend the Alaska Constitution and the United States Constitution. Number 1410 of residual power states here that may not be construed, or this Constitution may not be construed to limit the powers of the municipality. Because it's in direct contradiction to the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the full intent of government in our nation is to limit government, to bind it down with the chains of the Constitution, as one of our founding fathers stated. And we feel that politicians in Anchorage are going to be as honest as we ensure them to be, with limitations, and therefore this should be completely revised to protect us and enumerate the powers of the government. Section 16, transition, states that there should not be runoffs. And of course, you already know how we feel about that. We feel that there definitely should be runoffs. That is really 50%. And the last sentence down there in that section 1206 of government states that all non-elected officers and employees of each form of government shall become officers and employees of new government. As has been pointed out here, that is really absurd because we want to see some reduction in employees with the consolidation, not growth as usual. Section 1604, the organization executive branch, it refers to collective bargaining agreements, and we support the right of employees to bargain for their salaries, etc. However, we'd like to see something inserted here stating that, number one, that both sides shall agree to submit to binding arbitration, and this would, of course, the intent would this be to, we want to also see a limitation due to the security that government employees have, job security. They should take a no-strike oath. I feel very strongly about that one. And section 1605, the transition of prior law, subsection C. It looks like this calls for government by administrative order, with no possibility of public hearings, insufficient time for the Assembly to consider a possible action. We don't think the mayor should have that much authority. And the last one, we'd just like to add section 17, and we didn't really spell this out, but we'd like to see the municipality, let's see, it states here, limit the land owned by the municipality. In other words, it seems that the government is taking on and buying an awful lot of land, not putting much of it into use, as Dave Rose pointed out to us at a meeting recently, that there are something like 7 planners in the Parks and Recreation Department of the borough, and the city seems to get along very well without this kind of people, and it just seems like the borough is buying too much land without putting it into use. And we'd like to see some kind of limit there. That's the entire statement.
Thank you very much, Doug. I assume that you have that in writing, and if you do have, I will appreciate a copy. If you do not have, we have it on tape.
We will prepare it that way.
Mr.
We haven't yet, but just notice.
You wish to...
Just very briefly, I'm Heidi Ely, and I didn't want to let the evening go by because I heard so much talk about the community township. I didn't want to have a supportive word go unsaid. From the little that I've seen in our organization downtown, community councils could provide, is it Mr. Richardson? He said we need a sales pitch for this charter. And one of the things we want to offer to people is an assurance that they don't sit until 2 in the morning in a council chamber waiting to be heard. One of the things that a community council does is provide a voice for you as an individual. 12 people don't have to all be heard at 2 in the morning, but one person goes before that assembly speaks. And that's a wonderful self-education for community. The other thing, we talk about committees and meetings that could be meeting to death. One of the things that we've found is that we don't have to go to so many meetings. We hope. The community council is a receiver of information. And we should be notified as a community council of what is going on and what is going to affect us in our area. And if this is channeled properly, and it isn't quite functioning that way yet, but that is the intent, we can all presumably go to a community council meeting instead of every planning meeting, every city council, every.
Thank you very much. Is there anything further? The gentleman over here in the corner had asked.
My name is Bob Kniefel. For the past 4 years, I've had the pleasure of working for both the city and the borough. So my comments are directed more as to have been employed at the city and the borough in the past, and my feeling on some of the issues in the charter itself. Number one, the Ombudsman Clause, Section 3.09. I'm very much in favor of that. Having worked in both city and borough government, you see daily phone calls coming in, people who've been transferred 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and they're looking to find somebody to talk to. And there's nobody more irate, I guess, after 10 minutes on a hold and waiting for somebody to talk to them, and find out they get the wrong person. The Ombudsman at the borough, now that it's operating, I think is a step in the right direction. I would like to see, as was mentioned, and I know myself, that we do have a reporting schedule for them to show their efforts will be done. I think it provides a source for the public to go to, because so often people call up with a problem, they say, well, it's a street problem, and it ends up that really it's a problem with a dog problem, something like that. And in the process, they get lost in the maze of the governments and that, and it's hard to find the right person the first time off the bat. So an ombudsman can function very well, I think, in this type of operation. Secondly, having worked under both the city with the city manager form of government and the borough with the strong mayor, I personally appreciate the strong mayor more than the city manager. I feel it's more responsive to the needs of both the citizens themselves and to the employees of the units. This is, again, my own personal experience. One point that was raised is concerning the fiscal year. In dealing with federal programs, as many people in both the city and the borough do, there is a need to standardize. I know this probably have with the city especially, and the borough having different fiscal years. The borough adopts a roads and drainage program for fiscal year 75. The city has to adopt a corresponding CIP program for calendar year 74 and calendar year 75 that matches up. And a lot of times, I don't know, just duty and action on our part or whatever, but it's hard to coordinate the projects so that you've actually got a 6-month overlap in time period in which to operate and actually get something going. So I see there's a real strong feature of getting one fiscal year. I don't agree with the January to January operation. I guess basically because it seems that the last month of the fiscal year is a very hectic month, both for your federal grants operations, for your closing out that year, and it turns out that month would be in December, which everybody's going outside for Christmas, man. So from a personal point of view, I don't like December as being the last month of the fiscal year. I understand with the federal government going to the October system, they give us a lot better handle, I think, than the present July year now, because we really don't know until July 1 what our programs can be for the next year, but then we've already adopted our budget. Whereas if the federal government can let us know in October, we're going to be ready in January to take on the programs they've talked to us about, I think it works a lot better. Community councils have been discussed quite a bit. To me, I think there is some need, I'm not sure exactly how to do it, but the case in point, I think, is Tudor Park came in, and they had 42 homeowners. And there's a problem there. I think that that's too small. It gets down to the point where you have one subdivision area covering 4 streets and become a community council. I'd like to see some type of limit put on it as a minimum size, either area-wise or population-wise. I'm 100% behind the community council operation. Before we have an operation now, I think you're doing quite a good job. The only problem is when you get one small subdivision come in as a community council, where do you draw the line in? I don't know if you need to establish a fixed boundary now for each different area of the city and this or what, but I would like to see some type of a definition as to what is a minimum size for a community council. The, I guess, final point I can bring up is the assembly, and as far as the election themselves, I'm very much in favor of the single-member districts. I don't agree with some comments that were made about people on a district level voting on an area-wide basis for all the different assemblymen or councilmen it may be. I do believe that you can get a better response by having a person in your own area running in an election that you can run in at a relatively small cost compared to running area-wide. This is one of the many problems I think we face, especially here in Alaska. It's very expensive to run on an area-wide basis. And where you do run on a single-member district basis, you've got a lot smaller area to talk to. And I just pointed out with Mr. Hirschberger's case and some of the other people, we find more people knocking on doors and actually talking to the constituents, whereas running on an area-wide basis, you can't do that. So that's one thing to skip and you go more to the TV, radio type operation. So I think we can get a better contact with our assemblyman or proposed assemblyman by the single-member districts and give you more of a sense of feeling it's a guy in your area that you can talk to. End of my comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marshall. Are there other comments? I don't think.
I'm Roger Jenkins. I'd like to talk a little philosophically. I really strongly feel that part of the voter apathy that leads to low voter turnouts in Mrs. Coney's district and small groups of people like this is a real feeling out there. It stems from a feeling that no matter how informed the people might be, and I really think they are informed, that no matter who you vote for, it doesn't make much difference, regardless of party, etc. What I think it comes back to then is that there just are plain too many elections. And I would strongly suggest that you rethink the 3-year system of elections. What I would seriously like you to look at is that in the fall of the odd-numbered years, you have everyone run. 2-year term, mayor, everyone. I don't care what size districts you make. And second, that do not elect anyone by less than 50% of the people who do go out and vote. Third, I would like you to spell out how you're going to reapportion it. Whether the planning commission or the planning staff people are going to present to the, I'd like that a little closer pointed out in the parameters on which you base the reapportionment.
You'll get it.
And last, which is a nitpicky, I would prefer and very strongly suggest that you define the term residency in section 1414. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there other comments?
I might like to make one more note on that. In one of the previous hearings, someone observed that the situation might arise where there was a district and there was no one qualified to represent them residing within that district. And if I may pat myself on the back for remarking it, I popped up and I said, if you have a district of scoundrels, they be presumed to be represented by scoundrels. I still feel that.
Frank, thank you all for being here. Frank. And we do regret the problem created by the misinformation.
Frank? I think at least the charter commission members, I don't know where they got anything.